Hey folks, another NixOS video here. I think this is number 52. I want to talk a little bit about Guix, and I hope I'm saying that right because I've only heard one other person actually say it out loud, but I think it's called Guix, and it is a Nix-inspired operating system by the GNU folks, and it has many of the same features as Nix does. It is a little more heavy on sort of the political stuff, software freedom and whatever. I don't mean to dismiss that because that's important, but it is maybe a little more idealistic than Nix in its outlook, and it uses, for example, out of the box anyway, it uses a Libre kernel that has no dirty firmware in it, and etc. It uses, I don't know if this is political or not, but it does not use systemd. It uses something called Shepherd, which is a GNU project, which is sort of an init system, and it has had a tremendous amount of work put into it. You can just tell. It is impressive. Right from the beginning here, I must say that I am a Nix person, and I'm bound to get many things wrong in this video, and I'm sure Guix people will watch this and they will be rolling their eyes, just disappointed in me for all those things. But here's the deal. Here's what I will promise you. I'll promise you that I'll do my best to get things right as far as I can. I haven't done days of research on Guix. I've done hours of research on Guix, and therefore I'm going to definitely get things wrong. But here's what I'll promise you. I will promise you that for all the things I get wrong, if you leave a comment, I will make a separate video that goes over what I got wrong in this one. And I will do my mea culpas there. But basically, I think a lot of people watch my videos are Nix people, and I think they'd be interested to see, what's happening over here. So another thing, shout out to another YouTuber named, I don't know his actual name. The channel name is System Crafters, who he's got a bunch of Guix videos up. I'll leave a link in the description to his channel. They're really great. He seems like a really knowledgeable guy. So, what I wanted to do was sort of go through the installation of Guix, which is kind of boring. Though, I mean, whatever. It's kind of boring, but I think Nix people will be interested to see the differences between how you install Guix and how you install Nix. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to install Guix. We're going to go through. I'm probably going to speed bits of this up because it's, obviously, who cares? I've seen Linux installed a million times, but I'm just going to go to my let's see, my virtual manager, my virtual machine manager here. Create a new browse local. Nope, there it is. What? Downloads. What? Guix, are you there? Are you there, Guix? There you are. Yes, please. Should find. Okay, and I'm going to just tell this is Guix because it knows about Guix, and we will say, "Hey, gigs." And I should say that when I say I'm installing Guix, what I'm actually installing is called the Guix System. It is the equivalent of NixOS, as opposed to Nix. Now, Guix itself works almost exactly like Nix does, where you can install Guix, the package manager, on any Linux distribution. But then there's this other thing called the Guix System, which is what I'm installing here, and it operates as its own Linux distribution. So let's see. Let's call it Guix video, and that's it. Okay, so I'm probably gonna speed this up in the actual video here because you'll see me answering all these questions. No one cares, it's basically like a Debian style text installer that is the easiest way to get it installed, especially on a virtual machine. It really doesn't make any difference. So I'm going to go ahead and install it. You'll see me typing things, and I'll be back. Okay, we're going to boot Guix here. That took about, I don't know, maybe 20 some odd minutes to do. Definitely a beer and a half. And this is going to bring us to a graphical login, which is going to be GNOME. Utterly indistinguishable from any other GNOME system, probably. Okay, so just a brief interlude for people who are Nix people who, and I'm sure that the audience that I'm trying to talk to right now is vanishingly small, because I'm sure the people who know Nix know all about Lisp and where it comes from and whatever. But so one of the raison d'etre of Guix is that besides the sort of Free Software Foundation sort of political aspect to it, is that it is implemented in a dialect of Scheme, which is called Guile. And Scheme is a derivative of Lisp, Lisp processing language. And Lisp was written by John McCarthy way back in the day, in the 70s. Oh, 60s, sorry. And is the language you see with a bunch of parentheses in it. I mean, everybody knows that. So, but one of the interesting things about Lisp is that it is as far as I understand, as far as I know, it's sort of the originator. Well, maybe not the originator, but it made popular the idea of first order functions, or high order functions anyway, where you can pass around functions as arguments to other functions, which was kind of unheard of at the time. So like, if like I'm a Python programmer, right? So I know, I can define a function somewhere, whatever, and then I can pass the name of the function to another function and call the function I passed within the called function from, within there. I don't know how to explain it, but it's as opposed to something like C, where there's a strict delineation between the code that you write and the data structures pass around. The code is also data, and that's sort of the thing about Lisp. And Lisp is is highly influential, on all sorts of languages. Ruby, obviously Python, Perl, every interpreted scripting language, is sort of a Lisp derivative in some way. But in any case, so one of the first things we're going to go do here is to go and run a terminal. Here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Maybe I'll try to make the screen larger. Yeah, let me just change these display settings. We got 123, 1280 by 960. Yeah, why not? Sure, absolutely, perfect. So, for the Nix people out there, the equivalent of the Nix store is in GNU Store, and it'll look very, very familiar to you. Oh yeah, looks pretty similar. Yep, yep, yep. So uh, Guix is is owes much of its heritage to Nix. It does the same sort of thing that Nix does. It keeps multiple revisions of the same software inside the store, and almost certainly, although I don't know this for sure because I have not spent any time looking into it, but almost certainly uses something like PatchElf to go and fix up shared libraries and all that stuff so that you can avoid DLL hell. So it's very similar. And likewise, if you go into Etsy, you'll see a file called config.scm, config.scheme. And now I must say, Geeks people, what the, what? And what? Oh my, what? That must have hurt. That must have hurt. What I'm saying is they did not ship Emacs by default, which is based on Lisp. But anyway, so let's see. This is the equivalent of a configuration.nix file that would get generated in the current regime of Nix stuff. And I must admit, I don't know what half of this means. I can guess, use service modules, obviously these are the services you're going to start, operating system services. Your locale, time zone, keyboard, host name, all that stuff. We got our cars and our cons on our siders. This is super lispy. Super lispy. I don't actually see any siders or cars, but you get the idea. We're defining a user here, and then we define a set of global packages here. And I don't know what that means. I must admit, base packages, some sort of templating thing. I guess that comes in. I don't know. I'm sorry. Here's the services we run. We run GNOME desktop service. We run OpenSSH service. And we configure a grub bootloader. I mean, most of the stuff is super similar to what you'd find in the combination of a Nix hardware configuration.nix and configuration.nix. Oh, there we go. There's a cons. Do we have a cons before? Do we have a cons? Oh, we already had a cons. Oh, boring. We need a cars in here somewhere. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, this is, people who are used to Nix would be able to squint at this and be like, okay, yeah, I understand what's happening here a little bit. And so the overall disposition of this thing, just from the 20,000 foot level, it is basically Nix implemented in Scheme or Guile, whatever you want to call it. And arguably, I think, just after 20 minutes or so of using the thing, I think it has a slightly better sort of, user interface. Like this Guix command is standalone sort of thing, and you pass it secondary arguments like Guix pull and describe and some other various things that you can do with it. It will, Nix will be like that as soon as Flakes gets finalized, but this is already like that. It's probably been like that the whole time. This has channels, just like Nix does. I don't think it has the concept of Flakes or something like Flakes, where you and again, I'm sure I'm going to just get brutalized in the comments here because I have not spent enough time analyzing this, but and I'm sure there's a way to do this. Has to be a way to do that. I mean, it has to be a way to sort of pin something to a Git revision of a repository out there. But out of the box, the docs don't spend a lot of time talking about such a thing. And so, the equivalent of sort of Nix channel update is called Guix pull, and Guix pull actually surprised me a little bit because I think it actually Might even update some software. I'm not entirely sure. But I'm going to run this now, and you can get a sense of what's happening here. Now, one thing. Okay, I'm just going to run this thing. I'm going to have to speed this up because this takes a while, but I'll be back. So. Okay, Geeks poll has finished. It took, I don't even know how long. It took quite some time. And unlike Nix channel update, it actually upgraded some of our software. I'm sure this is just a minor difference in how people look at the world. The equivalent of, I'm not going to run it now because it would take forever. It would take too long. It might not take quite as long if I had based this on the unstable distribution of Geeks, but this is like the 1.4 distribution. I don't know when it was released, but probably some time ago. So it's probably got to do a bunch of stuff that the unstable one wouldn't need to. But this here is the equivalent of NixOS rebuild. So sudo e Guix System reconfigure will do what NixOS rebuild would have done. And unlike Nix, the idea of imperatively installing software is not frowned upon here. So since we didn't have Emacs before, I'll install it. And the reason it's not, at least as far as I understand it, the reason it's not frowned upon here is that Geeks writes a manifest file out for all the local software. So you can reproduce this as long as you have a description of all the channels you use and the manifest of all the software you've installed globally. Well, I shouldn't say globally. This is just for my user here. You can get that environment. You can get that set of packages back. In Nix, there's a real pressure to get rid of channels, mostly having to do with flakes at this point, and which I sort of agree with, because it's really nice to have to be able to have a known quantity from you're installing from this git commit in the Nix packages repo. This is slightly different. I'm sure there's an equivalent here somewhere that I don't know about, but so Geeks is pretty hands off when it comes to managing your files for you. It's telling you, okay, you can run this, and then when you run other Geeks commands, I think anyway, lack of knowledge is showing. You won't get whined at about it anyway. But basically, the commands that it wants you to put in your bash profile. Well, it has bash by default here. What? Huh? Yeah, that's what I wanted. Are these, and you can take these and just jam them into your bash profile, and they help you along in your Geeks journey. And one thing I did find a little definitely different than Nix. I'm not sure what I think about it, but so if I do Geeks install Python, for example, and that's interesting. 3.10.7. Okay, yeah, that's a later revision than I got before, but okay. When you use Nix, so what I'm doing here, translated to Nix, is Nix-env-i uppercase A Python. Install Python imperatively, And this is pretty much frowned upon inside of Nix stuff, unless you're using Nix as just a way to get like Unixy commands on Mac OS. Perfectly reasonable there. But if you're trying to get a repeatable environment, Nix-env is sort of frowned upon. But since Guix actually, and probably Nix does this too. I'm not even sure, but it keeps track of all the things you've installed. I think Guix treats Guix install as a more sort of first level citizen of the environment, and you're not really expected to sort of go in and add stuff to config files in order to install software. I think I would probably personally, I'd probably rather add it to a config file somewhere, because I don't want to. Yeah. Anyway, it's just a matter of personal preference. So, but now that I've installed Python, what's odd about this stuff? I shouldn't say odd. What's different about this stuff is that now it is added sort of I don't know what to call it, but this to when I run that Guix package search path, I guess, for other software that is Python related to my thing. And what it means is that, unlike in Nix, where you sort of have to like jump through a few hoops to install a Python that has certain Python packages in it, once you install Python on here, and now I do like Nix install. Oh, let's see. No, not Nix. Guix install. Let's see. Guix search Python. No. Oh, what is it? What is it called? Where you get the list of list packages? Oh no, I'm failing. Guix search. Let's see. Python 6. Oops. Python 6. Yeah, there we go. Python -6. So now if I do Guix install Python 6, like that. Python 6, because I'm installing it under my user, will now be importable when I run Python 3. I can import 6. Oops. Maybe I need to do this first. I think I need to do this first. Copy. I'm sure there's a one-liner for this. But if I just take this stuff and copy and paste it in here, now if I do Python 3, import 6, it'll import, which is really different than Nix. Nix doesn't really do that for you. And of course, this is more home manager territory than Nix is. Unlike in Nix, where home manager is an add-on, home manager is sort of part of Guix here, and I'm sure there's a declarative way where you can name packages and do what I just did. I read it in the manual. I'm confident about that. I just, again, I haven't spent days with Guix. I've just spent hours. Guix also comes with this concept of graphs, which are ways to sort of fool your system into believing that, let's say you have a package A that depends on B, another package B, and B is updated, but A takes forever to compile. So you want to sort of slide in the new version of B under the existing A, so you don't have to recompile it. Guix will let you do that sort of out of the box. And I think this is actually a feature next to, I was schooled by somebody today who said, yes, that is possible. It's like replace runtime derivation or something. But it's just not a common thing to do in Nix, but it's a first-class citizen in Guix. So anyway, I mean, there's some political things in here. I mean, you would imagine that you could search Firefox Oops. What? Geeks? What? 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 What happened here? I'm sure I just messed something up. Terminal. Guix search. Firefox. Okay. There's no Firefox in here. And that is because, you know, this is free software foundation stuff, and I don't know what's wrong with Firefox, but something's wrong. Something's wrong with Firefox. Now there's a Firefox fork in here that you can install. So you can do Guix install IceCat. It seems to be rather new. I mean, newish, in the hundreds. I've installed IceCat. Yeah. And let's see. This is my personal repository of my Nix configuration. It looks just like Firefox here, but it doesn't render the page properly. So I'm sure there's a way to get Firefox installed in here, and I'm sure there's other browsers that would render this stuff properly. And I'm sure I could probably go in here and figure out. I turned all this stuff off before, but I just couldn't figure out what would make it not render in there. So in any case, I mean, you get the idea. There's, it's an incredibly, what do you call it? Where someone is grasping. I mean, it's like they're really trying here. This is an incredible amount of work. If you go to their docs. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's not great. If you go to their docs, you'll see a much smaller and more focused set of docs than maybe Nix has. I'm not even going to say smaller. I'm just going to say it seems to have been written by only a few people, whereas the Nix docs are sort of just hodgepodge, like, been written by a bunch of people over a bunch of time, which makes perfect sense because I think Guix is much newer than the Nix is. But it really does have the advantage of being newer and seeing some of the mistakes that Nix has made, as far as docs go, and as far as sort of, I mean, I'm almost sort of don't really care about the language so much, although I think a lot of people do, because Nix the language is super lazy, and what it means is that it doesn't try to do much until you ask it to. Whereas I don't think Scheme has that same raison d'etre in mind. So, and I think probably that's why it's. I mean, other than much of the Nix package manager is actually written in C++, so it's it's pretty fast, and probably most of the Guix package manager written in Scheme. It's interpreted. It's going to be slower. I mean, that's just how life is. I wouldn't really care if it was slower, but I think the laziness bit would probably give advantage to Nix itself, because pull 14 megabytes of stuff into RAM because you reference something somewhere, unless you really need it, was one of the goals of Elko's PhD thesis. And I don't think Guix really cares so much about that. I think it uses as much RAM as it needs. Maybe not. I don't know. You tell me. I'm no expert here. I'm reporting from the field. In any case, I thought it was really interesting. I think, I do not quite understand how people can do this. It is just astounding to me that someone has done so much work. It is so much work It is an amazing, incredible amount of work. It might even be more work than Nix, because whereas Nix, the language itself is pretty limited. You know, it does one thing. It lets you build packages, whatever. You know, Scheme and Guile, you know, they're built to be general purpose languages. So probably the temptation is a lot of times to unlike Nix, where a lot of the stuff happens in shell. In when you build a package, you'll inline some shell into somewhere to awk something or sed or whatever. I think these guys probably shy away from that, and they probably try to do it all in Guile. And it is probably just like, it's a life, somebody's life's work is in this, and it's kind of amazing to me. It's really kind of impressive. And anyway, anyway, I hope this helps somebody. I doubt it. But as I said, if there are complaints, please let me know, and I will make another video addressing them. So thanks for watching.